My sister sent me a credit card charge of $7,800 for her designer wardrobe during a vacation in Paris that I paid for. You're just jealous I can pull this off. She snapped at me during a group dinner. So I finally unveiled her secrets from the past 10 years. I knew this trip was going to break something. Not the kind of break you recover from with an apology and a glass of wine, but the deep kind. The kind of rupture that changes how you see someone forever. My sister, Simone, invited me to Paris under the illusion of sisterly bonding. Let's reconnect, she said. We never do anything just for us anymore. She was right, we didn't. But I'd always known that was because she didn't want to. Not unless there was something in it for her. Still, I wanted to believe maybe this time was different. Maybe we'd talk. Maybe she'd open up about the years she'd spent in her curated influencer bubble, and maybe I'd share why I stopped picking up the phone for her calls that always came with a favor attached. We're not close. Haven't been in a long time. But we're family. And that still meant something to me, even if I couldn't always explain why. Paris was her idea, but I paid for most of it: the Airbnb, the flights, the dinners, the museum tickets. I'll Venmo you, she promised. I never even asked her to. She offered. She even sent me a mock itinerary with a budget breakdown, trying to seem responsible, like she was capable of planning a trip for 2 adult women without turning it into an Instagram photo shoot. It didn't take long for things to unravel. On our 3rd day there, I woke up to an email alert from my credit card company. A charge of $1,112 at a boutique in the 8th arrondissement. I hadn't been to the 8th, Simone had. She'd said she was just window shopping. At first, I told myself it was a mistake. Maybe she put something on my card by accident. We were using the same Uber app. Maybe she clicked the wrong card at checkout. I didn't want to assume the worst. But by day 5, I stopped getting notifications because she'd switched the alerts off. I only found out what she'd really done when I got home and logged into my account. The full charge was $7,841.22. All of it from Galeries Lafayette. Designer shoes, bags, 2 coats, sunglasses, silk dresses. I cross-referenced it with her social media posts and, sure enough, there were new pieces she was gifted for a collaboration. In truth, I'd paid for all of it. And when I brought it up to her at dinner, in front of friends and mutual acquaintances, she didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She smirked. You're just jealous I can pull this off. That sentence. That tone. That shrug, like she was the star of some reality show and I was the frumpy sister who didn't get the script. I felt heat in my neck. Not from anger that came later but from embarrassment. Deep, humiliating embarrassment that someone I trusted, someone I loved, saw me as nothing more than an open wallet and a stepping stone. I didn't respond. Not there. Not then. I smiled politely, excused myself, and left early. And then I started documenting everything. Simone had no idea that while she was posting photos of her dream trip, I was collecting evidence. Receipts, screenshots, invoices, all of it. I pulled statements going back 2 years. Found the Uber Eats orders she charged me. The Sephora orders she'd accidentally put on my PayPal. Little things I'd dismissed as tech mix-ups or one-time slips. But when you lay it all out, it's a pattern. She wasn't borrowing. She was talking. The part that cut the most wasn't the money. It was the fact that she knew she was doing it and didn't care. She knew I was recovering from my divorce. She knew I'd been paying off debt, working 2 adjunct teaching gigs to make up for the funding loss at my university. And still she swiped, posed, and smiled for the camera like nothing mattered. It was about more than money. It was about power. About control. About showing me that she still had the upper hand. And I realized I'd been complicit. I kept quiet. I let her get away with it because I didn't want the blow-up. Because she's my sister. Because deep down, I thought I could still save what we had when we were kids before the lies, Before the image obsession. Before I became her bank and she became a stranger with my last name. That night, after dinner, I opened a new folder on my laptop and named it Simone, Debt and Lies. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. But I knew I wasn't going to do anything anymore. The silence between us was mutual after the trip. No follow-up. No apology. No transfer of funds. She posted a carousel of Paris photos the next week, croissants, outfits, cobblestone streets, me laughing, forced, at a cafe. The caption read, "Paris is always a good idea, especially with your sister revolving heart sparkles #blessed #chic life #dream trip." I didn't comment. I didn't like the post. I didn't text. But I did start planning. There's something funny about people like Simone. They're obsessed with their own image, not just how others perceive them, but how they maintain control of the narrative. As long as they're the ones telling the story, they feel invincible. Untouchable. But what happens when someone else tells the story? What happens when I do? About 3 weeks after we got back from Paris, I decided it was time to see her. Not just texts. Not emails. Face to face. I wasn't going to demand money in a passive-aggressive message or send her a spreadsheet with a passive FYI. I wanted to look her in the eyes when I gave her the truth she'd been avoiding. I called her. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice overly cheerful, like I was a brand rep or follower. "Hey, stranger. Miss you." I ignored the fake warmth. "Are you free this Friday night?" "Just you and me. I'm making dinner." She hesitated, probably wondering if this was a trap. It was. But not the kind she expected. "Sure," she said. "I could use a chill night." I said nothing else. That week, I printed everything. I organized every receipt, every screenshot, every bank statement and Venmo log with timestamps. I wasn't trying to embarrass her. I wasn't going to scream or accuse. I was going to do something worse for someone like her. I was going to tell the truth with precision. Friday came. I made mushroom risotto, set the table with candles, and poured a bottle of wine I'd been saving. If you walked in, you'd think it was just two sisters catching up. Simone arrived wearing oversized sunglasses even though the sun had already set. She pulled them off dramatically when I opened the door and tossed her coat over the chair before sitting down like she was about to be interviewed. "God, I've missed your cooking," she said, already helping herself to the wine. "Paris seriously ruined me. I swear I've been craving that chocolate torte every day." We ate. Small talk. She talked about a brunch she had with a model in Santa Monica and how she might be pivoting into sustainable fashion, the same girl who just blew nearly $8,000 on designer clothes in Paris. Finally, over dessert, I said, "I need to talk to you about something." She looked up from her plate, licking her spoon. "Is this about Paris?" "Yes," I said. "And not just Paris." She rolled her eyes. "God, Mariel, are you really still upset about the card thing?" "I said I'd pay you back." "You didn't," I replied quietly. "You never did. You said you would, and then you posted the clothes as part of a fake brand collab. And that charge wasn't the first time either." Her smile froze. "I went back," I continued, "over 2 years. And do you know how much you've taken? It's over $14,000. Not just Paris. Not just one card. Uber Eats. Sephora. Target. Gas. Subscriptions. Amazon. Some of it is small. Some of it is hidden." Simone laughed a high, sharp, defensive laugh. "You've been tracking me?" "No," I said. "I've been waking up." She slammed her spoon down. "You're being obsessive. This is ridiculous." "No," I repeated, calm now. "This is factual. Want me to show you?" I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out the binder I'd put together. I slid it across the table. She didn't open it. You really have nothing better to do than go full forensic accountant on your own sister? I think I'm allowed to track where my money's going. It was just a mistake, she said quickly. You let me use the card for the Airbnb, and it was saved on my Apple Pay. Chill. I didn't mean to rack up thousands. I didn't reply. I just looked at her. Let the silence press in. That silence that happens when someone finally realizes they can't gaslight their way out. Then she said it again. You've always been jealous. I have a life. You live in a studio apartment. You teach night classes. You don't get it. And there it was. The truth, unfiltered. I didn't flinch. You're right, I said. I don't get it. I don't get how someone who calls herself a public figure can afford that lifestyle without any traceable income. But I do get how someone can live beyond their means if they use someone else's. Simone stood up. I'm not going to sit here and be insulted. You already sat here and lied, I said. So maybe just sit a little longer. I picked up the binder again, opened it to the gallery's Lafayette receipt, and laid it in front of her. This is the beginning of it. Not the end. She stared down at it, her cheeks blotching red. Not from shame. From exposure. I leaned back. You can pay me back, Simone. That's one option. Quietly, and in full. Or I can report the charges. I have the dates, the items, your photo matches, and the posts. You wouldn't, she whispered. I really would. I already have the fraud reports started. I just haven't submitted them yet. She stared at me. I added, I won't be yelling. I won't be posting anything. But I will be thorough. She sat back down. Folded her arms. Didn't say another word. I let her sit in it. And in that moment, I saw her, not the curated Simone. Not the filtered version. The real one. The one who'd spent years surviving on smoke and mirrors, and now, they were evaporating. Simone stayed seated for longer than I expected. Her arms were still crossed, but her body had slouched, not in defiance, but like someone who'd suddenly been told their performance was over and didn't know what to do next. I didn't push her. I didn't explain the binder further. I just let the weight of it sit between us. When she finally did speak, her voice was quiet. So what, you want me to write a check tonight? No, I said. I want a transfer. Full amount. $14,328. I'll give you the itemized list so there's no confusion. I want it paid in full in 30 days. And I want a written acknowledgement and no fake disputes later. You're not going to sue me, she said, almost laughing. I will if I have to, I replied. I'm not bluffing. She rolled her eyes. God, you sound just like Mom. That one stung more than I thought it would. But I didn't let it show. I sound like someone who's tired of being used, I corrected. She didn't respond to that. She started scrolling through her phone like she was bored, like the entire thing had become beneath her. But I know her. That was her shield indifference. She'd do it when we were kids, too, when she broke something of mine and pretended not to care. This isn't just about the money, I said, finally. She looked up, irritated. Then what the heck is it about? I held her stare. It's about trust, I said. It's about dignity. It's about you seeing me as a person, not a prop. Not a punchline. Not a resource. A person. Your sister. For a brief second, I saw something flicker in her expression. Recognition, maybe. Or shame. But it was gone as fast as it came. Instead, she said, fine. I'll pay for it. But don't expect me to apologize for being successful. That actually made me laugh, not cruelly, but genuinely. Because the absurdity of it was just too much. Simone, you're not successful. You're a facade. A curated version of someone who looks like they have it all. But you don't. You borrow clothes. You fake invoices. You live in a rented apartment with staged furniture and owe people more than just me. You're one sharp tweet away from losing the whole illusion. That landed. She pushed back from the table. Are we done? Almost, I said, standing too. If you don't want this getting out, you'll transfer the money. All of it. I won't go public. I won't involve a lawyer. But if you ghost me again, this binder becomes Exhibit A. Simone grabbed her coat, shoved her sunglasses back on, and walked out without another word. I didn't expect a hug. Or an apology. But I also didn't expect the door to close so softly behind her. No slam drama. No dramatic exit line. Just silence. For the next few days, nothing. She didn't respond to texts. Didn't block me either. Just nothing. Then, a week later, I got a Zelle notification, $5,000 received from Simone Quinn. No note. No explanation. Just the transfer. I stared at the screen, half expecting it to disappear. 3 days later, another transfer, $2,000. Then $3,000. Then $4,000 more. Each time, I'd receive a notification, and nothing else. No phone call. No text. Just money. Like she was paying off a fine, not a debt to her sister. And you know what? That was fine by me. After the last transfer hit exactly $14,328 over 2.5 weeks, I closed the file. Literally and figuratively. I saved the receipts in a locked folder on my computer, labeled it with a date, and backed it up on a hard drive, just in case. But I didn't check it again. Not yet. I didn't need to. The real debt had been settled long before the final payment. I felt it the night she walked out of my apartment without slamming the door. That's when something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't holding my breath, waiting for her to be someone she'd never been. I wasn't hoping for repair. Or understanding. Or even acknowledgement. I just wasn't waiting anymore. Something strange happens when you stop chasing closure. You stop bleeding from the wound, and you start watching it scar. And then one day, you realize the scar isn't ugly, it's proof. Of survival. Of boundaries. Of growth. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking her stories. I wasn't waiting to be tagged in a fake sisterly post or to be used as background scenery in her curated world. I was living mine. Simple things started to bring me more joy. Teaching my Wednesday night seminar on women in the French Revolution. Reading outside in the early evenings when the Chicago chill softened into something tolerable. Grocery shopping without mentally calculating whether Simone had slipped something onto my shared Prime account again. I even started writing again, not emails or lesson plans, but actual essays. Stories. Reflections. Nothing groundbreaking. Just me, processing, creating. Feeling. It was on a Saturday morning, about a month after the final transfer, that I got the first real sign that Simone's life was cracking, too. Beth, my friend and colleague who had been at that dinner where everything began unraveling, forwarded me a post from a small but influential digital marketing newsletter. The headline was clean, unassuming, "When Influence is Fraud, a Quiet Reckoning in the Fashion World." It wasn't about Simone by name. But it talked about the growing issue of fabricated invoices, misleading followers with fake partnerships, and the shaky ethics of influencer marketing. It mentioned anonymous sources. Described a well-known figure with luxury ties and a sister in academia. Beth had underlined that part in red. I didn't forward it to Simone. I didn't say anything. But I knew she'd read it. I knew she'd recognize the language, the tone, the intent. A week later, 2 of her brand deal links were broken. One of them was a European skincare line she'd been promoting for a year. Their Instagram had quietly unfollowed her. She hadn't posted a new outfit haul since Paris. Her day in the life reel slowed down, then stopped. Then a cryptic, black and white post showed up on her feed. Sometimes life reminds you who you are and who you're not. Time to reset. Broken heart, I scrolled past it. I wasn't rooting for her downfall, that's not what this was. I was just watching, like someone might watch a house that once looked perfect from the street start to quietly sag from the inside. You don't feel joy watching it fall apart. You just finally understand that it was never built right to begin with. A couple weeks after that, I got a text. Just one line. I know you're probably still mad. But I did pay you. Can we maybe talk sometime? I stared at it for a while. Not angry. Not triggered. Just neutral. I didn't respond right away. I waited 2 days. Not out of spite, but because I didn't owe her urgency anymore. When I finally replied, I kept it simple. I'm not mad. I'm just done. No follow-up. No coldness. Just the truth. She didn't reply. That was 6 weeks ago. We haven't spoken since. But something else happened quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the background of all this. People started treating me differently. Beth, for example, started inviting me to things I didn't know she thought of me for. Small lectures. Book swaps. Gallery nights. I always thought you wouldn't be into this, she said once. Why not? She hesitated. You were always with Simone. It was like, she took up all the space. I didn't think you had time for anything else. That stuck with me. Not because she meant anything bad by it, but because it was true. Simone had taken up all the space. Even in my own life. She'd made me quieter, smaller. I let her. I stepped aside so many times I forgot I'd ever stood front and center. But not anymore. Now, I found myself stretching a little. Saying yes to things I used to skip. Lunch with colleagues. Solo museum visits. Trying out new recipes just for the heck of it. There was a calmness now that I hadn't known I was missing. There was life. I used to think revenge looked like destruction. That it had to be loud, dramatic, undeniable, something that scorched the earth and left the other person in ruin. But it turns out, the most satisfying revenge doesn't look like chaos. It looks like peace. It looks like being free from someone you spent years bending around. Simone didn't fall off the face of the earth after everything. She didn't delete her social media or become a cautionary tale, not officially, anyway. She's still out there, still curating, still posting. But the edges of her brand have started to fray. The comments on her posts have changed. Fewer queen. And obsessed. And more subtle jabs. People asking for proof of her collaborations. A few followers calling out inconsistencies. Nothing explosive. Just enough to change the tone. And I know it's getting to her. Because the other day, I got an email. Not a text. Not a DM. An actual email. Subject: I owe you more than money. I've been thinking a lot about everything. I don't know if I can fix what I broke. But I want to try. I know that sounds fake, coming from me. But I mean it. I've started therapy. I'm scaling back. I know I can't undo the years. But I hope someday you might want to talk again. For real this time. Simone, I read it once. Then again. And then I archived it. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. Just out of knowing that I didn't need a redemption arc for her to move on. Sometimes, the story doesn't end with a hug or a shared glass of wine or a picture perfect "we made it through." Sometimes, it ends with silence. And peace. And space. And I was finally okay with that. I'd spent so long waiting to be seen by her, to be appreciated or validated or even just respected. But what I needed, all along, wasn't her approval. It was my own permission. To stop making excuses for mistreatment. To stop letting loyalty chain me to people who wouldn't do the same for me. To stop confusing family with obligation. I don't hate her. But I also don't miss her. That's the part one never expected the relief. Because for the first time in a decade, I'm living a life that belongs entirely to me. No borrowed outfits. No silent resentments. No overdraft fees or mysterious charges or midnight guilt. Just me. My quiet little apartment. My work. My circle of people who see me, not for what I can give, but for who I actually am. And that? That's the real revenge. Not in destroying her, but in rebuilding me.